Have you noticed how the same dynamic keeps repeating across different relationships? Different people, different environments, but somehow the same kind of friction. When this keeps happening, it's easy to assume that the problem is communication at work, in relationships, in families. We might think that we just haven't explained ourselves or the rules clearly enough. But usually, that's not the case. If you're new here, hi, I'm Tiffany, and this is a part of my Lead Yourself series. If you want to make clear decisions in relationships or at work without overreacting, disappearing, or slowly losing influence, stay with me. In the last two videos, we talked about tension, the early signal that something is off, and how confusing boundaries and requests quietly gives your authority away. If you haven't watched those videos, I'll put the links in the description box. Go check them out. Today, we're going one layer deeper, because long before a boundary is argued over, something else has already been decided. So here's the shift that most people miss. Boundaries aren't defined by what we say. They're defined by what we consistently do. And over time, those behaviors turn into invisible rules. Rules that shape how people treat us, often without anyone explicitly agreeing to them. Let me show you how this plays out. Currently, I'm a teacher who teaches preteens and teenagers. If you're watching this video and you've ever worked with that age group, you know this as a fact. They test limits constantly, sometimes out of malice, but you can't argue that that's sometimes how structures get clarified. I got this student, let's call him Bill. Bill was sharp, curious, and often disruptive. He interrupted others, talked over classmates, and he pushed against classroom norms. I didn't want to shut him down because his curiosity and rebelliousness had potential. But I still wanted him to learn that how his behaviors would affect the space and how it would affect his future. So instead of repeating boring reminders or reacting emotionally, I said something very simple between us. I told him, if A happens, B follows. So the rules were, if he talked over somebody or behaved inappropriately in class, he would have to write a short reflection in the notebook that I gave him. The notebook was private, between him and me. No public humiliation, no public correction. What we did was that every time a rule was broken, the response was the same. My goal was to direct him to a better path. Over time, something shifted. By the end of the semester, we reviewed his patterns together. And by the time he graduated, he was helping teachers regulate the classroom. Nothing changed because I explained anything better. It changed because the rules were consistent and real. In other words, there was a blueprint for Bill to follow. Some people who hear that story might think, well, of course, he's a kid. But here's the twist. Having your boundaries and limits tested doesn't stop with children. Adults too do this, just with better language and more plausible excuses. Before I became a teacher, I managed a gym with 300 plus members and staff. And what surprised me wasn't conflict. It was how often people tested limits quietly, almost in a sneaky way. Back in my early managing days, there was this instructor who wanted to turn his spinning class into cardio boxing. But from a scheduling standing point, it didn't work. So I said no. With reasons. He said he understood, but went behind my back and taught cardio boxing anyway. Except for being pissed off, that moment clarified something for me. He wasn't confused. He was checking whether my decision actually mattered. So I waited until the class was finished. Out of respect for the members, I let him go. No explanation, no debate. From that point on, the rule was pretty clear to everyone else. Decisions weren't suggestions. Rules were set by follow-throughs instead of conversations. Here's the pattern in all of this. Rules form where behavior repeats. Tension shows up first, that's episode 1. Requests blur authority, that's episode 2. And in this episode, when there's no consistent response, an invisible rule fills the gap. Usually not in your favor though. People don't respond to stated boundaries, they respond to enforced ones. If you've been using the worksheet from earlier episodes, you don't need a new one for this. You're working with the same framework, just applying it at a deeper level. When you answer where the tension showed up, ask yourself whether it happened before, in different settings with different people. When you look at what you did in that moment, pay attention to what your consistent default is. Over-explaining, overreacting, or just silence. And acknowledge this. When you identify where influence was lost, that is where invisible rules are formed. The worksheet I'm talking about is linked below. Grab it if you need it. Boundaries aren't about control. They're about clarity, especially before resentment sets in. So the next time tension shows up, instead of asking, why do people keep on doing this to me? It might be more useful asking, What rule has been formed here? Am I reinforcing it? In the next video, we'll talk about something that confuses a lot of people. Staying calm on the outside and quietly building resentment on the inside. Because silence can be regulation or it can be avoidance. And calm leadership without clarity doesn't preserve authority. It erodes it. Anyway, that's it for today. I'll see you in the next video. Bye!